we'll be able to see it later. But welcome everybody. We're so excited. This is our UCDC USM Cubesat Design Competition 2021. Welcome to our kickoff event. Again, we're very excited to see all your faces. This is going to be a great competition. The USM team is very excited to be offering this. I think it's just going to be an exciting event all around, and just thank you for your interest and passion in the space industry and space science and space technology to bring this all together. Now I also got to say, I got to thank all of the USM team and especially our Dean Qualls, our Dean of the College of Science, Technology and Health. He was really the champion and the vision maker to bring this competition together. And so just a big thank you to him for his leadership and vision on that. And right, this is our first. So I just want to make that clear that we're really excited to have this be our first offering of this design competition. We're very much looking forward to bringing this to you again in the future. We hope to make this an annual event. But as our first, we will be learning from you all as well as you learning from us as we go through this. But we're excited to go through this journey with you. And as an inaugural team, I think you should all congratulate yourselves for helping make this year successful. And also a little bit about USM. So on the background, you know, a lot of them are on the call today, some of them are not, but there is a very large team of folks at USM who are working to bring CubeSats to Maine. And I just want to highlight their efforts. Right now at USM, we have about 10 faculty, staff, and administrators within the university system who are looking at CubeSat research development and K through 12 outreach. So just a big shout out to them for all of their help and support as well. And also, we can't have a competition without the help and support of you teacher advisors. So all of you teachers out there who really brought this together for your schools and your teams, just a big shout out and thank you for you and your efforts and your passion for what you do. Can't do these competitions without you. And especially the students, right? Again, your interest and passion in space industry and technology are really what's going to bring this all together. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the amazing things going on in Maine and specifically in the space industry. But you right now as students are just in a prime position to be learning about this, to become familiar, and ultimately be able to then contribute to a growing space industry in Maine. And so thank you very much for that. So from Marine, myself, I'm Professor Scott Eaton. I'm Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering at USM. And this is also my first year of teaching and just really excited to be part of this program. I'm actually not a space scientist in general. I am a combustion engineer. But again, when I met Dean Qualls, and it was just really exciting to see the vision of the space program here at USM, and I just had to be a part of it. And so I'm really fortunate and proud to be helping to lead this CubeSat design effort. And I'll also introduce Dr. Ashish Lamba, who is also Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering. Ashish, I think you had a few slides that you'd like to share just to sort of introduce yourself. And he'll also share some information. Again, we talked about the space industry in Maine. He'll help share some background information on that.
Sounds good. Can everyone see my screen? All right. All right. So yeah, thanks, Dr. Eaton, for doing this and being our leader in organizing these workshops and in organizing this event as well. I'm Ashish Lamba, Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering here at USM. And like Dr. Eaton, I'm also very excited to become part of this new initiative that we have, not only at the university, but at the whole state of Maine, with trying to grow a new space economy over here. Well, outside of that, I have a very varied variety of research interests looking at advanced materials, their applications, and also looking at shooting stuff with lasers and taking imaging with them. And my research group is called the Lasers and Materials Engineering Group, or the LAME group. And that's what happens when you let your students choose the name of the group, and we just went with it. And yeah, just as an example over here, I have this picture of what we do in our lab. This was a mouse head, which we cut open with a laser. We used the laser for the luminescence and took this picture. And yeah, that's just an idea of what we do in my lab. But with the UCDC 2021, we're really excited to bring this competition out for everyone. But it's not the first initiative that we've had to engage with the larger community here at USM. We've had these series of workshops where we've had high school students from a few high schools in the area who have come in and learned about cube satellites and a lot of different things to do with cube satellites, like programming, systems integration, computer-aided design, and things like that. And we've also had a variety of speakers who've come in from NASA. For example, we had Andrew Klesch, who was a celebrity kind of crush of mine, and then he was there giving us a talk with the first cube satellite that was out of Earth. It was in Mars with the Marco cube satellite, and it was really great to see what they'd done, and it was very inspiring for the students as well to learn from those experiences, right? And in terms of the bigger picture, all of this work has been made possible by a grant that the Maine Space Grant Consortium got from NASA, really to develop education and research opportunities in the space industry in the state of Maine. And the reason for doing that is that ultimately we would like to build a spaceport in Maine, right? So Maine is the only place on the eastern seaboard where you can launch satellites, which will go into what's known as polar orbit, right? So these orbits are going in the north-south pole, and there are not, there are fewer satellites on polar orbits than in using other kinds of orbits. So that really presents a unique opportunity for the state of Maine to grow this new space economy. And it's already happening, right? So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that exciting launch that happened with Blue Shift, a local Maine company, where they're the first commercial company in the world to use a bio-derived fuel for their rockets. And we were involved with that, in that one of the payloads that went on there was from the Falmouth High School, and we advised and we worked with that team on the chips that they sent up for their experiment. And I was there. I went for the launch. You can see me over there wearing my mask rather poorly. That's not how we wear masks. You shouldn't let your noses protrude like that. But it was really cold, and I didn't care at that point. So yeah, no, I think that's all I had, Dr. Eaton.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Lamba. And so what I'd like to do is introduce some of our helpers and supporters of our competition. The first person I'd like to introduce is Bjarke Gottfredsen. So he's the co-founder of XinaBox, which is a IoT technology company specializing in working for communications, specifically for things like cube satellites. And he comes to us with 30 years of experience in IT and communications, and also from South Africa. So I'm really pleased for him to be joining us here. I think he said it's 4 o'clock his time. So he's just about ready to call it a day, but I'm really glad that he was able to join us. So Bjarke, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Yes, so it's been a great pleasure for us to work with you guys in Maine. We actually, just to continue with Professor Lamba, we've been talking to Sasha from Blue Shift on a weekly basis. They have asked us to assist with doing the payload design for future launches. So we are kind of like figuring out how can we do a very compact design. So obviously one of the things that should be able to fly is Cubesat, but we're also going to try to see if we can fly some of our smaller satellites that will allow the very limited payload size that Blue Shift is operating with. They're only operating with 30 kilos, or something like a 12U satellite space. But if you can have a lot of small satellites, that will be great. So kind of like to bring into that, for you guys who doesn't know it, we do these kind of components. What Dr. Lambert was talking about when he said chips, he probably meant X chips. And this is the stuff. And you can actually build your circuit by clicking these X chips together using your hands. And that's, of course, very useful here in these days where you can't really pitch up to your institution and you don't have access to your lab if you can build it like that. So next week, actually, we have 8 satellites launching with Antares rockets that's going up. And we've been invited to a great launch event that Princeton University do with their high schools down there. Gonna see how that goes. Last year we had 41 satellites going up with this technology. And for Cubesat, the only thing we do is that we add this little what we call a PC 104 interface here on the side. Sorry, I have to put it on the right side here. So when we do that, then we can actually plug it into a CubeSat, and it can actually operate with other CubeSats, what's called CubeSat modules. So it doesn't have to be XinaBox only. And that can go to some of the bigger circuits, like, for example, something that runs Raspberry Pi, where you can run NASA's CSF software that you can run, and there's GPS, and this is a global star radio and things like that. So you can operate it on a much bigger scale, and you can of course stack it. This is like a standard CubeSat PC104 board. And then we just launched our kit to the International Space Station. So this is the engineering model. So I just put it together here for the show here. So this is actually in 2 layers. So if I take this one off here, let's see, other way. So this is the 2 layers. So this is a particle matter sensor, and we also have a CO2 volatile organic sensor and a temperature sensor. Of course, we want to know that we are in space, so we also have a IMU on board. And then we have a real-time clock, because we sit inside a Faraday cage, so we can't really ask the internet or the GPS what the time is when we log the data. So this is actually what XinaBox is about. You can build satellites as CubeSat, what the competition here is about. And you can build smaller satellites. I don't really suggest to build bigger satellites, because there's not really need for it. But the smaller satellite, where the ThinSat, for example, that goes up with Antares, or we coming up with a new satellite format that is based on these X-tips 100%. Yeah, that's about it from my side.
Great. Thank you very much, BRK. Very helpful. And so, yeah, I do encourage teams to consider XinaBox chips in your design. They are simple to use. You can find them through a lot of retail outlets. And there's just a host of different types of chips that you can get. So if you're having troubles, that's a good place to start. And next, what I'll do is turn our attention over to Dr. Rick Eaton. So he's an electrical engineering professor at the University of Maine. And he's also an advisor to the UMaine High Altitude Ballooning Club. And so they started in 2011, and I think they're up to, or probably more than this now. I think the last number I've seen is they've had over 90 successful balloon launches up into the stratosphere. So I will turn it over to Dr. Eaton to talk about HAB, and ultimately those will be working with him for the finalists who will be then hopefully testing their designs on a balloon launch in June. So take it away, Dr. Eaton.
Got to unmute before I share my screen.
Great.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. And now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, we have a high altitude ballooning program here at the University of Maine. Just small correction, it's not a club, it's a program we have funded by the Maine Space Grant Consortium. We do a lot of launches both for our students and for schools around the state. Any teacher, we just offer, take often if we can, we'll do a launch at the school with students there. But if not, we can just put payloads up, and so I've got funding from Maine Space Grant Consortium to send up as many as I can get. So this, a typical balloon here, got the balloon and the parachute, sometimes radar reflector, and then a bunch of payloads that we can hang from it. Our typical flight would be, we can take up to 12 pounds total on a balloon without having to file a waiver. So it's easy to do this. Each payload can be up to about 4 pounds, with a number of them on the string, up to 12 total. We use helium or hydrogen to go up about 5 meters a second. And usually we get altitudes of 35 kilometers or more. That's over 100,000 feet, 110, 120,000 if you're doing feet. By that time, the balloon's expanded about 10 meters or more in diameter, and it'll burst. So it's, like I say, near constant rate up. Takes about 2 hours to get that high. Then it descends by parachute in about 30, 45 minutes. So hour and a half, hour 45 or so total for the flight. And we recover the payloads. We have done 101 launches to date, and so far we've never lost a single payload. So that's kind of, I don't believe in jinxes, so I keep touting that, and so far it works. And most of you know what the atmosphere is like. When you're up in space, you're up, above like 60 miles, 100 kilometers. But down here, we're up in the stratosphere around 30, 35 kilometers. Of course, the atmosphere is divided into these regions. The atmosphere is in these regions based on temperature, and where the temperature decreases in the troposphere to the tropopause, then in stratosphere, it's increasing again. And then you get to the stratopause and the mesosphere, et cetera. And so, like I say, we're on up here above a lot of stuff, ozone layer, et cetera. Things that we can send up. Well, the nice thing about balloons is that if you are doing CubeSats, you can test them out and work out a lot of the bugs without spending all the big bucks on it. So, we can do a lot of the experiments you do on CubeSats. I've seen things from astrobiology, sending up seeds, spores, et cetera, atmospheric science, other properties, physical properties, material science, computer and electronics. We're electrical and computer engineering, so this is what usually my students are doing, things like this, embedded systems, designing the sensors and data storage and transmission, et cetera, mathematics and et cetera. So there's a lot of things you can do with the balloon. The launch involves stringing it up and then taking it out and getting the payloads ready. And the balloons are, fairly big. On the ground, it's 6 to 8 feet in diameter. And then, like I say, it gets on up to about 30, 40 feet. At the altitude we get to, the sky is just black. You see a thin line of blue atmosphere down below. It is quite high. There's not quite as much curvature of the Earth as appears right here, because this is a fisheye lens, and if you pointed the camera downward, the Earth would actually look like it's curving upward. So, but anyway, the balloon bursts there and comes down, parachute. You can see that this one just burst, because you can see up at the top here the stuff from the balloon, shrapnel from the balloon. Anyway, heading down. We do track it, and it lands somewhere. This is one of the few that lands right pretty close to a road. And, it's usually in a tree somewhere or in a lake. That's two of the highest probability things. So that's our program. Again, we're doing launches for students in the state and, schools and stuff, and we're happy to send up CubeSat payloads to get them tested out.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Eaton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love those pictures. Always really entertaining, and I think really drives home to the point that space can be accessible.
Yeah, and we always try to send, it's always got a GoPro camera on there, just so, because it's part of the excitement there, is to see how high we're really getting.
Great. So what I'd like to do now is introduce one of our other guest speakers today, and we're so glad to have her. So on the call, we also have Miss Melissa Poore. So she is a teacher at Bishop O'Connell High School in Virginia, but she has a list of credentials, and I'll just go through some of them, and I'll let her speak for herself soon. But she's also the 2020 Carol Perry Educator of the Year. And she also works with the International Space Station's amateur radio. So she's on the education and committee on there and is ambassador to that program. She's also the ISS National Lab User Advisory Committee member, among her other things. And not only that, but she's had a wealth of successful launch missions with her own high school teams. And so I'd really like to have her talk about her experiences working with high school teams, the excitement about putting payloads into space, and just, the exhilaration of, watching students learn while doing some really cool science. So Ms. Poore, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Hopefully you're hearing me fine and you're seeing my slideshow.
Yes.
Okay, great. I have to say my heart is pounding. I'm so excited. This kickoff just kicked me off too. It was really neat to hear all about these experiments, hear from Biake about the updates, innovation updates with the X chips. And I think it's a good opportunity to transition to me to show you Biake. I'm doing another ThinSat, so I'll be launching also in 7 days. And this is our brand new patch. So students, do you think I'm excited? I'm excited. And my students are excited, and we create real, real missions with real opportunity, real roles, and real direction is what the hope is. We expect to run into problems, and that is why we have successes. So this is my journey briefly to you, starts with the Cubesat. So I wanted to do something big. I wanted my students to know they could do something big. I wanted other teachers to know, and I wanted us to just have more power together and get to space. All right. Let me move my windows. I'm never sure if my video is blocking the window. So here are some images of my in-classroom hands-on lessons where all 400 students did touch. I say touch because identifying out of the box my kindergartner, first grade, second grade, some of them did use some of the tools and do many testing procedures, but it was very hard to establish and safely keep our hardware. So this was real, right? We had bunny suits, we had the whole 9 yards of our pumpkin kit that went through 20,000 iterations. So in the lower right corner, you can see one version that I thought was looking good. It was going. No. So many things happened, but a grant required us to have some new safeties. So we had to tear apart that one on the lower right and start again. And the center is closer to what it looked like. So part of this experience is just, you know, taking down the walls and barriers, creating access to space. Somebody already said it. So right there on that blue card, you can see I flipped it over and all students and teachers involved signed that little card, and I shrunk it 100 times down. And I'm lucky I have some bad mock-ups that didn't come out right that I can show people. But this was exciting for me. And it did take 4 years though, okay? So 4 years, that wasn't perfect. So here's some of the experiences that happened. Each year was a refresher, reminder about the big mission, new job titles. I had camera operators. I had students that went from second grade, third grade using SSTV for actually using amateur radio and software-defined radio. And that was our telemetry on this project. Proof of concept, I had to have a high altitude balloon test. I could only be tethered. I'm in the free zone in Washington, DC, which has led to more complications and restrictions, but I won't pause on that note. Let's go on to the successes. There we are. First time nanoracks launching, first mission. So incredible, so many delays, but it finally happened. We were on orbit for 6 months. That red thing right there, they didn't get a picture of our blue square, but that is a school that I had join us in Canada to be one of our ground stations. So I created, we call them RMOCs, Remote Mission Operations Centers, around the world. I started with 5, training them, sending them a radio. So that my mission was to do something bigger for all of us. And I just have to say it kind of exploded. So let me show you what else we've done. All right, there we were tracking. It was in orbit for 9 months. If you can see, there it is without the antennas. So starts the problems that did occur for my mission with the antenna deployment. But this is a little more about what happened. So firsts are big. I think you don't have to always have a first, but in space, everything is almost a first. It's so incredible. The opportunity is huge. So we did get a Cubesat launch grant, and we were able to operate within these commercial milestones and restrictions. It was crazy, but as I learned and got more excited, even with barriers, the opportunity just kept exploding because we'd knock down that barrier and do something new. So exciting. So that had a whole nother twist of other STEM related learning. And I'm not going to go into all that because I want to stay focused on satellites, which if you asked me when I was little, like a dream besides being an astronaut, working in space, never would have I imagined I could be part of a mission that built a satellite. But I stand here before you now showing you students that have done that. So I want to get to more pictures, but here's a few more details about the mission. It was on orbit for 6 months during emergencies on orbit with the space station. So no one cares about the education opportunity, unfortunately, but now we do. So this, let me pause about STMSat-1. We were able to create so many new procedures for schools behind us to be able to have fault tolerant payloads and all sorts of things that, a first opportunity would never uncover. So no matter what, Maine, first time to do anything, students, I'm so proud of you. This is going to be incredible. Let's go to what is happening now. X-chips, yes, we are into X-chips also. We have been using X-chips since 2017. The Cubesat mission showed us that we needed something a little easier to use, something with a quicker turnaround where we could do experiments and applied coding and do all sorts of skills that we knew and could do, but bring them down to our level. So in the top right corner, you see an integration, I call it a meshing of our engineering projects, and that is a simulator, a Cubesat simulator developed together with AMSAT and myself and Dr. Alan Johnston. And we are presenting on that this afternoon on a larger scale, but I just kind of want to show you the expansion that can occur. So in the lower left corner, I have just coders, crazy coders with these chips, doing things with microbits, coming up with experiments. We're big time into space gardening now, where we have 3 different projects with the space station, and we're using that to measure our humidity and many more things, trying to create a mechanical watering system. So the opportunities that will come out of you starting something big, something different, and something gutsy can happen like this. So Biake, you may recognize somebody there. It's not you, but it is Judy, also a co-founder of XinaBox and the co-inventor of Cubesat, Bob Twiggs, right there, and some of my officers with me who traveled there. That was our ThinSat. We called it Space Toast. We wanted our first mission in high school. So I went from elementary to high school and had the luxury of having a few of my elementary students. So this was that mission in 2019. The balloon test was in 2018. And there we are at Wallops. And this is what's about to happen in 7 days as well. And let me see, is that my last picture? It could be. That is my last picture. So I'm watching my time. I have a couple minutes. So there's a point I want to make, and that is no matter what you do from here, whether you want to go into aerospace or build more satellites, whatever you do, this is going to open your eyes to opportunities, skills, and interests that you're not even aware of, because that happens to me. I just love what I do. And I love doing extra projects because that's what gets me excited. And I don't even know time is passing. So thank you for having me here. And We are going to be on NASA Live TV during the launch briefing, talking about our experiences with DJO Polaris. And the last thing I'll say is that my students just were so excited about this. They wanted to go bigger, so they entered a contest and won it. And they will be also featured on Tuesday and Wednesday on NASA Live TV for an app they developed for the lunar surface to help astronauts in training and navigation once they get there. So I'm just super proud. It all started seriously with that first enormous CubeSat project that I dreamed would be a ping pong satellite, a CAN satellite. And then I said, why not? Let's make a CubeSat. So thank you for having me today. And I can't wait to see you in orbit.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. That is just a fantastic presentation. Again, your experiences and your enthusiasm for this are just infectious, and we appreciate you being here with us. So what I'd like to do now is turn our attention over to our mentors that are going to be here with us for our competition this year. And so I have a little slide. And in fact, I think most of our mentors are on this call right now. So this competition couldn't be possible without the support and help of these mentors. So every registered team is going to be assigned a mentor, and we'll talk about who your mentors are in just a minute. But if we have some of our mentors on the line, I think either Dr. Martinez, Dr. Maxworth, I think you're on the line as well. If you wouldn't mind just saying a quick introduction and hello to the teams. And Dr. Maxworth, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. So I'm Ashanti Maxworth. I'm an assistant professor at University of Southern Maine. So this was my, so I joined USM last August. So this is my second semester. And yesterday I celebrated my 10th year teaching anniversary overall. So that was a big moment for me, and I'm really excited. I have been working with polar orbit satellites for the last 8 years. I have worked with the Van Allen probes mission and also with the Canadian EPOP satellite. So looking forward to working with you all. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Maxworth. And I say you're shortchanging yourself. So she is an expert in Earth ionosphere and magnetosphere research and science, and has also working on a lot of CubeSat development research here in her own lab. So very fortunate to have her as a mentor. And it looks like Dr. Martinez maybe he was here earlier, but I think he had to drop off, unfortunately. But Dr. Martinez, he's also been at the university for over 10 years. He's spearheading his very own CubeSat mission called Earthshine, which is really exciting. And he's also developing here at the university what we call a CAT lab, or it's a CubeSat assembly and testing laboratory over in I think it's in the science building. So also just a wealth of resources here. So let's move ahead then and actually start to look at some of the teams. So kind of big moment here. So I don't know if everybody yet knows each other, but we're going to go ahead and go through the list of participants so you can see who your competition is this year. So first team to sign up was Bangor High School. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have Freiburg Academy, Lincoln Middle School, Portland High School, Winslow High School, Wyndham High School, Maranacook Middle School, Falmouth High School, Yarmouth High School, and Maranacook High School. So we're really fortunate. I think we're going to have as many as 12 teams competing this year, and both overall, with most of the competitors being in our high school teams. We do have 2 middle school teams, and I'm so excited to see you guys on board and really excited to work with you this year. And so I mentioned that we'll have our mentor assignments. And so here's a table that will show the different schools and who your mentor is. The way we're going to work this out is the mentors will be instructed to reach out to the schools. So we have the point of contact for your teacher advisor. We'll go ahead and once we make contact, we'd love to schedule like an initial Zoom call with the students and yourself as an introduction and then get started. I know a lot of teams are already kind of well underway, and that's fantastic. Some already have team names picked out. You saw Miss Melissa Poor there. She was showing your mission patch. That's always a fun activity to do as well. That's not a requirement for this competition, but it does add just an element of creativity to what you're working on. So coming up with that team patch is always a fun team building exercise. So once the mentors and teams are able to get together, it's my hope then that you'll stay in constant communication with your mentor, provide them updates. If there's any questions that you have about the process, maybe you're stuck on a technology or just looking for some creative advice on what to do next with your CubeSat, please reach out to them. They're, again, just a wealth of resource for you and your team. So with that, I'd like to kind of turn now a little bit to some of the competition rules. Obviously, if you've registered, I hope you've at least taken a glance at the competition webpage. But if not, I just want to take a few minutes just to reiterate some of the events that are going to be going on during the competition and some of the rules for judging and what the submissions are. And so, right, the first thing is that we have our teams, and our teams need to be comprised of a teacher or a parent advisor. So somebody who can act in a role of responsibility to shepherd the team through. And for those teachers and parents, given the size of the program right now, we can go ahead and offer you a $500 honorarium for your efforts. So I will be reaching out to those teachers and advisors here shortly to gather some information from you to begin that process. The honorarium would be paid at the time of a successful CubeSat design submission to the competition, but we can still go ahead and get paperwork going now. Teams should be comprised of between 2 and 10 students. I will say that is a rough guideline. I do know of a few teams who already are outside of those bounds, and that's okay. Special, exemptions do apply. Teams are all in different places. The way teams might need to work together can change depending on your location and COVID situations. So we totally understand that for this year. So we'll be very flexible. Teams will also, again, have that competition mentor that have been assigned to you. And again, really happy to be working with you. And you are also welcome to bring any additional external consultants that you may feel is required. So I know some teams already have some other interested parents or interested alumni who heard about their schools entering the competition and they just want to lend some support. That is totally acceptable. I will say that when it comes to the submission, we will be trying to work very hard to make sure that it's the student's work that gets submitted. Obviously, it's going to be hard for us to necessarily parse that, but we will be trying to keep an eye out for that, just to make sure we keep a level playing field as much as possible. And then, so we talk about mission. So what is it that you're actually going to be doing? Well, ultimately, what you need to come up with is a mission. And a mission usually starts with just a 1-sentence, very high-level mission objective. What is it you want your CUBE satellite to do? It could be as simple as taking a picture of the moon. It could be a technology demonstration, like I just want to know, can I solve a Rubik's Cube within my CubeSat while it's in orbit? It could be anything. Be creative. Choose your own adventure. If you're stuck on ideas, sometimes this could be the hardest part of your journey, is just taking that first step, getting started. What should I be working on? Your mentors will be happy to work with you to help identify what some of your strengths are, what your interests are, and together, based on that information, I think we could help you to develop a good mission objective for your team. And then once you have your mission objective, you need to come up then with some engineering designs based on some constraints to achieve that mission. And so some constraints of this program are going to be, we're going to restrict you to a 1U cube satellite form factor. So that means that your cube has to look, this is Bob Twiggs, actually we mentioned him with Melissa Poor. He's holding a 1U cube satellite in his hand right now. So it's basically a cube. It's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. It's small, right? It can fit in the palm of your hand. That cube satellite, though, doesn't necessarily have to stay that size. You could think of a mission that might start as a cube, but maybe there's something that could pop out of your satellite, or it could change shape. Don't be constricted necessarily to having to conform to that shape, but it has to start in that shape. Also, the cube satellite has to be 1 kilogram in weight or less. So you have to sort of think critically about when you're putting your components together, making sure that you understand that there's a weight restriction as well as you're putting things together. And can you build it for $1,000? So as part of the competition, we're going to want to see a bill of materials, is what we call. Basically, what are all the parts and pieces that go into your CubeSat, and can we buy all of those for $1,000? This is going to become really important because later I'll talk about the judging, and if you become a finalist, we'll actually work with you to buy those components to make your cube satellite and see how good your conceptual design was. So does the cube satellite function as you hoped it would? We'll help you improve it if needed, and then hopefully have a successful launch of that satellite in June on the balloon. And so when we talk about balloon testing, there are a few other things that are going to come up, right? Balloons go up and payloads will ultimately fall back down to the ground. And so, and when I say ground, I use that term loosely because in Maine, chances are you're going to be landing in water. So it's also important that your cube satellite try to be waterproof. So that way when it splashes in the water, you can recover your satellite and get useful information out of it. And you're also going to need some kind of onboard power system because most satellites are going to require some kind of electronics to make them work. And so you're going to have some kind of a battery pack in order to make that happen. Okay, so we'll move on. So a little bit more about the rules then. So the competition rules, we're looking for submissions, right? Ultimately, we're looking for a final design submission that will be due in April. But we can also look at preliminary design proposals. So for some teams that want to get some feedback from the judges about how their Q satellite is currently taking shape, we will accept preliminary design proposals in April as well. So early April, final design submissions are in mid to late April. So you can get some feedback before your final submission. And what the submissions are going to comprise of is all teams will have to have some mission title, right? What is your mission objective in a clear, succinct sentence or less? And then as well as a list of the members in the team and what their responsibilities were. So if you have a team of 10 students, it is our hope that each student was participating in developing at least some aspect of that cube satellite. And so it's also just a recognition, right? We want to just award those students for their hard work and recognize the fact that they've made contributions to the team. And so we'd like to see a table of member lists with responsibilities and deliverables. And then so for those teams who are in our middle school age group, grades 6 to 8, what we're going to be looking at for a submission would be basically a 100-word summary about what their CubeSat concept is. And then as well as a short proposal, so less than 1,000 words, that just basically describes what is the function of the CubeSat, what's inside of it, what is it comprised of, and what is it going to do? What can you describe its evolution while it's going to be up in space? Like, are there different steps to its operations? Just try to put those on words as best you can and demonstrate to the reviewers that, yes, they understood what the CubeSat is and how it functions, and that there's a reasonable opportunity for success if we go into the build phase. And then for our teams in the high school age groups, so grades 9 through 12, it's basically the same format, but we'd be looking for much more detailed, a bit more drill down into some of the nuances maybe about the cube satellite. Right, you're going to encounter a lot of problems as you start to consider putting these CubeSats together. And so the judges will be looking for some of that deeper understanding through your narrative. So you'll be given 2,000 words. Right? You don't have to write 2,000 words, but that is the maximum. It should be less than that. But as you'll see, right, a lot of these things are complicated. You'll quickly fill up this space answering these kind of detailed type questions that come up. And then again, ultimately, each team does need to submit a bill of materials. Again, our hope is our finalists will go into a build round where USM people will provide resources and expertise to help you build these CubeSats. The judges need to be knowledgeable about what it is we need to buy to make your mission successful. And we'll be judging whether or not we think that your mission, as you outlined, is going to be successful with the materials that you've specified. All right, and so let's talk then a little bit about the judging. So the first round of judging is what we call our triage round. So basically, we're going to be getting proposals. Right now, we have about a dozen teams. More can be joining us in time, and that's okay. They'll be late starters, but for those motivated, they certainly can put in a successful proposal. So the judges will first go through those proposals, and we'll do a bit of what we call a lightning round. And we just want to basically give each proposal a review to make sure that each proposal is what we would call a successful entry. So that means that they put thought into their CubeSat design. It looks reasonably accomplishable in the technology description they provided, as well as the bill of materials that were provided. And so those would be then awarded a successful trophy, so which would be a great standing. We hope all teams would be able to be successful through this program, but not necessarily. Once we get a list of successful applicants, the judges will then go into what they call their finalist selection judging round, where out of all of these successful teams, we will down select within each age group 3 of the finalists. So the top 3 basically CubeSat designs that were submitted to us, and they will advance into the build phase. So once we go into the build phase, you'll be working with USM personnel to, again, build these CubeSats. And once we go in June, hopefully, to do our launch, judges will be there as well. They'll review the build materials. They'll take a look at the form and function of these CubeSats. And then we'll also get to demonstrate their operation through the balloon launch. And as a result of that, we'll have each team will get an award. There'll be an overall winner, and that team will get an award, as well as we're hoping to also provide a school award. And we're thinking about what that might look like still, but more news on that to come. And then we'll also be providing what we call a Best in Show award. So a Best in Show could be, well, maybe a team had a really creative solution to some problem that might be unique in the CubeSat world, but maybe it was a bit more of a project than they could realistically choose. So maybe their CubeSat didn't quite function the way they'd hoped it would, but boy, they really put in a lot of effort and were creative. So they would get a Best in Show award. And then for participation in this build round and having a successful launch, we'll also be given a runner-up award to those teams as well who had a successful balloon launch. And so a little bit more about the timelines. So the registration deadline is March 13th. So I know there's a lot of teams who may be maybe not here today, or maybe be listening to the recording, who are late registration entry. That's okay. So we're going to continue to keep that registration up until the 13th. So even the people on the call now today, if you know of other schools or educators that might be interested, there's still plenty of time to join. April 1st would be our deadline for preliminary design submissions to us for consideration and feedback ahead of the final design, which will be due on April 16th. And then judges will have our final selections on the 23rd of April. And then as soon as that is announced, we'll begin the process of working with those teams to try to get them to USM if possible. I know COVID's going to be a concern. Otherwise, we could work to buy the materials and provide them directly to the schools, and then we can figure out how we can support those teams remotely. But either way, we will be going through a build phase starting in April and then culminating in a balloon launch sometime in June. And I say that is to be determined because there's a lot of factors, including weather, that play into that decision. and some logistics I'd have to work out with Dr. Rick Eason as well. So that's the general timeline of events. And with that, I'd like to just open the floor to folks, get some general questions and discussion going. And I just want to close by saying again, thank you all for your interest and your participation in this year's competition. I am uber excited to be doing this with you all. And just thank you. And again, to the students for being here. So questions or discussion?
Yeah, Scott, Tom here. There's nothing that would stop a team from going ahead and getting XinaBox or equivalent and start working on something, even if they're not. It's before the finalist stage, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So, and if a team's a real go-getter and they have access to their own resources, absolutely, they could start building stuff now. And in fact, I know there's some teams in this competition who do have some experience in this area. They maybe already have some hardware to start playing with as well. So for those schools though, who are brand new to this and are still learning, that's okay. You'll just be coming at it from a different direction. And that's where you can really rely on your mentors to help get you started.
And do you have the 3D print files for the box? Are those available?
We do. And in fact, if you work with XinaBox in particular, they have some CAD files that they can supply as well for working within a Cubesat. And then for those teams who have maybe access to a 3D printer or even working with USM, we can do some 3D printing as well. We can share with you some of these, what we call CAD files or computer-aided design files that are basically, you can first model your CubeSats on a computer and then figure out how it's all going to lay out and what it looks like in the computer. And that just helps the design process move along sometimes a bit faster. So if teams have questions about that too, please reach out to me and we can help point you at the right resources for that.
And also all registrants are going to get a 3D printed Cube satellite frame as well, right, Dr. Eaton?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, we have them all boxed up, ready to ship out. So as soon as this event is over on early next week, I'm going to be putting labels on those boxes, and advisors watch for those coming in your mailbox soon.
And Dr. Eaton, I guess we haven't spoken about this before, but can we make available to all the registrants all the lectures that we've had in the workshop so far to do with, everything that's to do with Cube satellites, right? So we've had lectures from computer-aided design using a free computer-aided design software that's available to everyone online, OneShape. We have lectures about the space atmosphere, some very good lectures by Dr. Maxwell. She's a really gifted teacher. Then we have some lectures about engineering design process and orbital mechanics and things like that, right? So I guess we can make those available to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, all teams, please keep an eye out on the competition webpage. We are going through a lot of updates on that right now. We're going to be supplying a lot of new content. You'll also see just the format of that website changing in time. So as we update it, I'll be emailing the teams, let them know if there's new content being posted. And yes, we have, as Dr. Lamba mentioned, we've had now 4 lectures within our CubeSat development workshop series that will also be open to you. So you'll see the YouTube links that you can watch then and catch up. And there must be, 12 hours of technology content there for your teams to review and learn on.
Pedro's got a question. We're not hearing you, Pedro.
How's that? Is that better?
Yep, can hear you now.
Terrific. Thank you. Sorry for the technical glitch there. Essentially, I just want to make an observation and an expression of gratitude to everyone that's involved in this program. We've seen what Blue Shift has been able to do in the past few weeks in terms of putting Maine on the world stage as a feasible place where the aerospace industry can do business. And now it falls to us to develop the generation of people who will be running this aerospace industry. So I think I just want to express my gratitude to everybody involved in this, because essentially what we're doing is we're fueling the future by fueling the dreams of these kids. You know, to me, I grew up in Central Florida, so space was just reality. It just happened. I watched the entire shuttle program, you know, happen in front of my eyes. And so to bring this to this community where many kids thought of spaceflight as a science fiction thing is a very special and noble endeavor. And so everybody that's involved here, I just want to say thank you. And this is really great.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pedro. I couldn't have said it better myself. You're a great ambassador for these students. Thank you. Great, and I've noticed there's some activity on the chat boards too about where you can find some of this information. So I see that there is a link to that competition webpage that's been posted in the chat, so please follow that. And there was a question specifically about where you can find these instructional videos. And unfortunately, they are not yet up, but we'll be working on putting them up this week. And I see a question here. The testing of balloons, is there something that teams can do multiple times if something goes horribly wrong? Unfortunately, once we get to the balloon launch side, that is a one-shot deal. So I do encourage you and your team to think creatively about how you can not only develop these payloads to go onto that balloon launch, but also figure out ways that you could probably test them ahead of time. And again, mentors will be great to help walk you through that process, because right, you want to try to make extra sure that once you go up into that balloon launch, right, as part of the nature of the competition, you want to have that payload work flawlessly the first time. Right? That's where NASA, you know, that's why we pay them the big bucks. They have a very low failure rate.
And also, you know, that's just within the realms of this competition. But what we're expecting is that all teams that register will continue this good work beyond the competition as well, right? So you will have the resources of the balloon launch. You know, Dr. Eaton regularly works with schools all the time to get launches up. So, you know, outside of that competition, if, you know, things happen, things go wrong, go wrong with NASA and things like that as well, you will have that opportunity to continue and maybe try for another balloon launch.
Let me just add that, yeah, I do with my regular program. If you do want to get on my email list so that whenever I start the balloon season, I'll send out an email just saying this is, you know, our time period, et cetera, and just let me know if you want to get something up. So if you want to get on that email list, I'll just type my address in the chat. It's reason@maine.edu, but I'll type in the chat. And welcome to hear from anyone.
Great, thank you, Dr. Eaton. Yeah, and I should stress too that, right, this is our first competition. We certainly hope it's not going to be the last. So if you enter this round and you found there was just some problems with your CubeSat, but you've identified what the problems are, we would more than be happy to look forward to your registration at next year's competition where you can improve upon your design and hopefully have a better showing next time. Okay, well, again, the USM team is just, let me express our great gratitude for your participation this year. Again, and our excitement for working with you all. And you'll be hearing from your mentors hopefully next week. And we're looking forward to getting this competition rocking and rolling. So to all of you participating, thank you, thank you, thank you.